Okay.
All good?
Yeah, it looks like it. So today we are playing Californium. Alright, now we're ready to go.
Oh, it's the juggling of the sound.
Yes. Okay, so today we're playing Californium. Chris, you picked this game. You want to talk a little bit about it before we start, or should we just go?
Sure. Well, I'll try to... I'm going to go ahead and start over. I actually managed to play this through before. And so this is the developer's quote-unquote love letter to Philip K. Dick, and was initially attracted to it because of its obvious connection to, a great science fiction, well, in my opinion, a great science fiction author, and also as a student of English studies. And so you start out with this, before each chapter you start out with a little segue here where you have to type in, and obviously I'm not as good a typist as I should be, and I cannot multitask.
And I'm not super familiar with Philip K. Dick, but I would assume that this is from Philip K. Dick's story.
Well, this is terrible, and it doesn't forgive you for any mistakes either. So you start out in this apartment, and you're typing, and you hear this knock. So you probably couldn't hear it over my chattering. And it's fairly straightforward. The aesthetics of this game are simple yet lovely.
Mm-hmm.
For years now, ever since we lost our little Alice, I've shared my life with a stranger consumed by grief. Where did your dreams go? What happened to the Elven Green, which is the character you play, who wanted to offer his wonderful stories to the world? I'm leaving to escape the madness that is slowly killing you before it destroys me too. I'm leaving so that I can fight my own battles. I would have loved to have you by my side. Good luck, Elvin T. And that's Thea, I believe the name is. So the screen kind of fades in and out. Every time you encounter these moments of duress, your vision blurs and goes kind of skewy.
Hello, you've reached 415-612-1928. Leave a message after the tone.
Hey buddy, it's Don. I've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks now. I'm still waiting on your copy for the radio ads. The campaign launches at the end of the month, and the clients want me to fire you.
So the premise is that you're a struggling author, modeled after a Dickian type character. I'm not sure if it... I don't know much about Philip K. Dick's personal life, but I know there's a lot of biographical elements in this game, just by what the developers have said in interviews. But just the setting is in California. There's a lot of drugs and psychosis involved, and paranoia. So you have
It looks like it's the end of the line for you, Mr. Green. Incurable writer's block. A brain corroded by mind-bending drugs and dime store alcohol. The woman of your dreams and your little girl, no more than distant memories. Who'd want to live such a nightmare?
So, the game is broken up into 3 chapters, I believe, and each chapter has maybe half a dozen, no more than half a dozen, of these puzzle sets that you have to go through, and the television will indicate how many you have left. So it's telling me I have 6. Now, where this gets interesting is you have to take your time, and it makes it more interesting when you're dealing with kind of a little bit of lag here, because there's this, you can see the flashing objects off to the right, and that's kind of a sign that there's a sign there.
Different there.
So when you see the symbol, I'm not sure which Greek character that is.
That's theta.
And you press the mouse button, and it opens up these breaks in space.
Uh-huh.
And in this case, it opens up to a door. And I've played through this, so I remember somewhat. You have to center the cursor right on that object and press, and it opens up again. So you can see the television makes a tally. Now, if you notice, the theta is up there again, but if you move from the spot, it disappears. So the puzzles are a combination of position and control. Alright. I'm trying to remember where all of these are.
So are you sort of changing this world that you're in into kind of parallel dimension in a way?
Yes.
Okay.
So, in it, as you go through, I'm not sure how far we'll get in an hour. You could probably, if you've done this enough, you could probably finish it in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But I'm not going to give myself the benefit of the doubt to remember that I remember all of these. So I have 2 left. And so there's always this lingering paranoia, which is a signature Dickian trope. If I look out the window, that's my landlady staring up at me. No matter where I go, there's always this sense of surveillance. And of course, there's always the one I forget. So you see these objects. This Thea is his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife. Child has passed away.
Oh, there's one.
And it's an interesting...
Congratulations, Mr. Green. It looks like you can achieve something after all. How touching. But this is just the first step. Writing is a solitary vice. Are you ready to face the outside world?
So, and that's typical of how this game progresses.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm gonna make, before you go out there, I'm gonna make one meta change here. Just make things a little smoother. Alright.
There you are, Green. Not only do you owe me 5 months' rent, you don't even bother to answer my letters anymore. I can barely get by on my small pension. I have no choice but to evict you. How you look like a bum. Get off the drugs and find a real job, Green.
See, wouldn't this be take on another level if it was in French?
Well, yeah, but it's obviously in California.
So this is basically the setting for the entire game. Different iterations of this scene.
Okay.
I think you can go a little bit faster, but there are these edges that are fairly compact. You get to the edge and it pushes you back. As you can see, all of these figures are always facing you.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting when you pointed out that there's a theme of surveillance, but I mean, these sprites always facing you is a pretty standard, at least old school 3D environment trope, because I mean, even in Doom, the legs of the bodies would always face you because they only defined one side of it.
Now, the developers kind of use this in a unique way, and it comes into play towards the end of the game.
Hey man, you going to weird world? You write sci-fi? Sure takes imagination. I'll get you to read a short story of mine. It's about this dog and he thinks garbage men are aliens. Maybe you could talk to Don about it? I heard him yelling earlier. He was going berserk, baby. The guy seems like a real hard ass.
So there's just these characters, and they, whether it's rent or work, they're always demanding things, always asking of something. So the next, let's go up to the editor, and he's pretty much your stereotypical opportunist editor type.
Hey, Elvin. Man, you are a sorry sight. I'm still waiting on your first novel. You know, I've always been there for you, but we can't go on like this. I'm through with giving you advances to sit around all day sinking deeper into depression. I'd rather remain good friends and let you find another publisher. Look at me, Mr. Nice Guy, hooking you up with advertising gigs, but you can't even write those. The radio ads for the astronaut Patty dolls? Nothing. The ones for Love Lax laxatives? Nada. And me? I have to refund the clients. Sorry, pal. But you're a writer who doesn't write. Too bad. Sci-fi is cool. Like that guy from San Rafael who wrote that novel about the freaks who live on Mars. I didn't get all that, but the guy tripped me out. That's the kind of stuff I'd like to publish. Freak out.
So that's, and we have another television, and it sends you on your next. And that's almost about as linear as this game gets. For the rest of it, you know, it kind of sends you on your way. I think after this, the puzzles are outside in the arena. So there's this. Some of these have to do with timing.
So you interact with the theta with a delta, looks like. Which are two types of waves, if I'm not incorrect, though I don't know what that means.
That's significant for the end, or towards the end. So there's this constant. Again, this is.
Do you find that interaction with it more? It looks like you have to click it while you move, almost. Do you find that?
Well, our illustrious writer has discovered a taste for multiple realities.
Do you find that interaction more frustrating than, or do you find it? I don't know what I'm trying to say. How the interactions you have with the environment are fairly simplistic. You just click at an object that you found, and then you kind of move on. Does that speak? Is there? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Why don't you keep playing? I'll try to figure it out. I think what I'm trying to get at is that more obnoxious than it is? Does it lend itself to the plot of the game? Does it lend itself to the narrative of the game? Or is it simply a way to have a game or an interactive fiction, despite not really... Maybe another way to think about it is could this game be told just as well non-interactively?
I don't think so, because the mechanic, at least the developers are doing their best to to use the mechanic as a way of instilling paranoia and this constant uncertainty of what is real and what is actually part of the game.
Okay.
So I mentioned before, like, this lag is adding an interesting depth to it, because it's making it even more difficult to target things. I'm trying to avoid talking to people for a minute. And since we're on the first level, things are a little bit easier, but as you get into some of the later stages, you find yourself always catching these little flutterings out of the corner of your eye, so you're always searching.
Hey, Elvin! Good to see you again. So, finish your book. You have to pay your tab, right? Or Stavros is broke. The police are everywhere with that Crystal 8 coming in from Mexico. Gets in the way of business. The clients are too scared to buy dope from Stavros now. Except for two local hippies. Some guy from the Murder Squad came by. All in black, like a crow, a tough guy. He was like something from that TV show, The Invaders. He asked about you. What's Elvin writing about? How does Elvin get high? He asked about Thea too. She communist? She running with the Black Panthers? What does Stavros know? Scata, he never knew there was a communist party in America.
So you can hear the television somewhere in the background. You'll find that.
Mind if I try?
Sure, not at all.
Okay. Now this is really laggy. There's
Yeah, the textures.
oh. I'm not gonna relaunch it. Sheesh. Okay. I'm doing this for the rest of the time. Oh, come on.
Oh. All right.
Okay.
So you can start to see how that mechanic is definitely intentional.
Mm-hmm. So is there a sense, at this point, are you getting a sense of, like, what this parallel world, like, where it's coming from, or what it means, or something?
Not really. I mean, I'm assuming. I mean, it's well. Brighter people may have picked up on this before I did, but I certainly didn't. In fact, I thought maybe it was just a different, had something to do with like a mood or a perspective, because there hasn't been anything that's been up until I think it's this one or it's one of them in this room. Yeah. So these I'm like thinking, oh, this was an old recording studio of some kind. So I thought, okay, so it's a different type of space altogether. I think back in the apartment there was a bust of Abraham Lincoln, who's an interesting figure throughout the game.
Okay.
So like the space is different, only slightly, but it doesn't really. At least I didn't pick up on it right away where this is going, or what type of space this is.
All this is most stimulating, my friend. You've finally given some meaning to your life. As one of your fellow writers said, man is absurd in what he seeks, great through what he finds.
Now there's all these allusions to different authors that if I were a better English student, maybe I would know them, but I.
Green, you pencil pusher. Why are you sticking your nose in other people's business, huh? Looking for Crystal 8, maybe? No one can get their hands on that shit. What else, huh? Doesn't it bother you that good Americans are fighting for the free world in Vietnam? While you intellectuals are safe at home, getting high around the clock. One of these days we're gonna clean up California. Get rid of all the lefties, hopheads, homos, and blacks. Give it back to true Californians.
You certainly move slow around here.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see you in Monterey. You missed everything, brother. 3 days of total craziness. Can you imagine thousands of brothers and sisters giving themselves to talk? Some guys never came down. Otis sang, "Try a little tenderness." He was dressed like a prince. I'd definitely spend the night with Jimmy and Otis. Like being right between fire and style. You should have seen Jimmy. He fucked his Stratocaster right up on stage and torched it. you want to light my fire, Elvin?
All right. So, you're more familiar, it sounds like you're more familiar with Dick than Philip K. Dick than I am. Do you...
It had to happen sooner or later. Get it out of the way.
Do you recognize any allusions to his works in here?
Well, it's been a while. In fact, I read... So you see this twitching. There'll be a lot of that throughout the game. I reread Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep since over the past week.
Okay.
And there's this, that one seemed especially appropriate because there's a lot of, maybe I don't want to give too much away, but again, we're probably not going to get through the whole thing, but these dimensions are time.
Okay.
So you're looking into the future with each of these, with each dimension. And so there's this uncertainty about where one is at any given time, if someone is even real. So there's those types of themes.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Like there's the director's cut now that has him.
It implies that he's a replicant.
Yeah, so that is, that type of questionable, dubious identity is a huge part of this. What is reality?
Mm-hmm.
Those types of questions become more prominent as you go forth.
Is there a lot of drugs in Philip K. Dick stuff? Because I get the sense, although I haven't read it, that A Scanner Darkly has a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I haven't read that one either, or even seen the movie. And it's, I get on a certain level almost more of a sense of Burroughs in the way that this is presented, at least in terms of like this squalid existence of these Californian junkies, even though Burroughs wasn't really Californian, he was just very all over the place junkie. But again, I don't know Philip K. Dick, and it sounds like you were kind of in between of your knowledge of Philip K. Dick when you played this, and as far as like you had read him, but you weren't super aware of his stuff.
No, given the information, and the motivations offered by the developers, I'm going to assume drugs was definitely a factor in Dick's life. I know that there were some significant personal issues that he had.
Because he was a writer, so of course. I am blanking on this one.
Drugs, let's see what I'm thinking. Drugs aren't a huge part of this first chapter. It's an element of the narrative, but I don't think it carries over as much or as prominently in the other ones.
Okay.
Although these characters these NPCs all carry over into the other chapters, but in different guises.
Mm-hmm. Got any clues here?
I don't think there's anything in there. Anything at the phone? I seem to remember there being one up.
Got a room at your place.
You got that one up there. Looks like that car is flashing. There's one behind you by the burger stand. Yeah, see, it's...
Oh, over there?
Yeah. So, now the Saturn, like
Mhm.
that was flashing if you center the cursor on S, or... And so those are the types of things you have to look for throughout,
Mhm.
and you... With just being a... Not high definition, but the...
You gotta be aware of how the environment changes.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that's sort of evoking, I don't know, a writer's perspective on how they have to interact with the world, how they view it, in terms of noticing things that other people aren't noticing?
Yeah, especially when those elements, those little glitches in reality become kind of a source of inspiration and a source of frustration at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I think if you go up on top of this on the staircase, maybe there's one. There's like the water tower across the street. Thought that was flashing a bit.
Do you know any other games from this developer?
No, not at all. That I'll tell you right now is, I think the flashing diner is just a
Just an
flashing
environmental,
sign.
just
Yeah.
a flashing diner. But see, it's weird because I don't think this is part of the thing I was looking at over on the other side. But opening those up lets you go into... Oh, okay, never mind. I was gonna say... Mhm. Oh, I can't go over there. Alright.
There it is over there. Yeah.
I need to be way over here.
Yeah, there's this question of perspective, like you were saying, like always wondering if it's even worth paying attention to any of this stuff. Is it a glitch or is it just a blinking sign?
Yeah, you got to be pretty confident in the integrity of your engine if you're going to do this. Like,
Yeah.
there isn't any clipping problems.
I mean, I can see. I was when I came in a little bit earlier yesterday. was trying to accommodate for some of these things, but like mouse sensitivity but I think just on the bigger screen it's also having a hard time.
Well, it may be because we're only running at 30 frames per second.
Oh, okay.
But at the refresh up on this big screen is only 38. Oh, come on now. So this wasn't a problem when you initially played it.
No, not at all.
Alright, there we go.
It's your lucky day, Mr. Green. We're offering you a unique opportunity.
Alright, now this is where the next chapter comes in.
Ultimate trip into
The music changes a bit. So for this, I think you go to the top of... This is where you go to the top of the staircase
worlds where
up to your apartment.
even oblivion. Are you ready to take the plunge into the triangle of earth, fire, and air, Mr. Green? To quote one of your movies, reality.
Nope. Wrong
is nothing
staircase, sorry. Across the street. So now for this, to proceed to the next chapter, you have to line up the symbol. So you kind of have to figure out how it's being projected, and there's a staircase, like if you follow that beam, yeah, right there. There's that one.
I see. Okay.
So that's chapter 1.
All right. Can you hand me my coffee, please, sir? Gamer Anthro is telling us that the lab needs better internet. Yeah. Okay. Oh, God. Oh, I thought it was yelling at me. I'm like, hey! I thought it was doing pretty good.
Yeah, so every time you're typing, there's an interruption.
Just like there always is.
Yeah. So now we're in a bit more... we're getting a little bit more dystopian. This is more of a present day Man in the High Castle type environment, where Abraham Lincoln is the celebrity politician. Everyone's got an altar to him in his room and in their house.
You've written a successful book on him.
I'm sorry?
You've written a successful book on him in this reality.
Yeah. California is this it's kind of a alternate state.
Patriot Green, I'm so honored to meet you. Have you heard? Agents with the
So now the
Office of
tension in this
Californium
world becomes
have broken
one,
the
not
Supercon
a,
agent
the surveillance is of a little bit different variety, where
Mhm.
you're not, people are asking things of you, but more because you're a minor celebrity.
Hmm. I also find it interesting when games have NPCs that you, as an NPC, cannot, or as an NPC, that's an interesting way of viewing a game protagonist. You, as the character in the game, can't actually respond to.
Yeah.
Especially when they directly ask you a question, you know. It's like... And that happens really oddly in Half-Life, especially Half-Life 2, where there's all these people talking to you, and you just can't talk back to them. It's very odd.
It was Alex say not a man of words, or don't talk much, or something. And
like
where
that.
they flat out accuse you of not speaking.
Good day, Patriot Green. I was about to drop off a national security memorandum at your place of residence. What a wonderful
Now there's a couple of
enemies arrested on our day of national
Steam
celebration.
achievements that have to do with these dates. I think one is, starting the game on February 12th and finishing it on March 6th, or whatever the significant date is.
The father of our nation can be proud of his
So there's a lot of,
Happy 12th of
other than the narrator, there are these other elements that kind of call back Stanley Parable.
Yeah, well, there's a very meta element to it as well. The game sort of extending out from just what you're actually playing to how you play it and how you start it. And I would fully expect this game to do that and have, like... I shouldn't say I would fully expect it. It's just, it seems completely appropriate because...
Feel that light evening breeze. It's payback time for Mexico. What a wonderful day.
Certainly a contemporary game.
We have orders to prevent anyone from entering, but we do apologize, Patriot Writer.
Patriot Writer.
In the next chapter, the celebrity, your character, Elvin Green, it's far in the future. Not sure if it's the one on Mars or not, but you eventually become a demagogue of sorts, and the book that you've written has become the Bible for this future.
Okay.
And so, and the world you're on Mars, and Total Recall, I can't remember the story that Total Recall is based off of, but the Martian stories come out, or Philip K. Dick's Martian stories are evoked, and the world is Mars is populated primarily by these androids. Yeah, that at some point, for the beginning, revere you, and then almost instantaneously towards the middle of that chapter turn against you and come after you.
So is this alternate reality sort of the writer fantasizing about his work being recognized for as important as, I don't know.
That's what it feels like. What is not being a novelist, what is the end goal of a writer, or a fiction writer? Is it to become, a celebrity, especially like why would you pursue it if your personality is completely against notoriety and attention?
Well, I would maintain that the best writers pursue it because they can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do that. It's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, but it's interesting how many stories there are about writers that frustrated writers. I mean, of course, there's millions of stories about writer's block because that's what writers write about.
Been going through my mind. It's about a Californium dog that reports extraterrestrials disguised as garbage men. What do you think?
Good evening, sir. You know they managed to dismantle the terrorist group thanks to me. I told the UK agents I always saw that evil woman hanging out at the Greek's place, and they finally arrested the bitch. Happy 12th of February.
I'm kind of curious what the 12th of February is.
How long you been coming here, Patriot Elvin? 10 years? 15? You know Stavros, he never hurt a fly. They, she was a nice lady, but
Yeah.
with those terrorists...
Abraham Lincoln's
she
birthday.
lose her mind.
There you go.
They
Always the
tackle
simplest
Stavros.
answer.
You start telling stories, you'll be on first boat to Athens. With wife and kids. Like we say back home, when your neighbor's house is on fire, yours is in danger. They were scary. We know you saw her. You're an accomplice. So Stavros tells them. Yes, Thea came to diner often.
It's interesting, when I first played it, I spent a lot of time looking at the posters and propaganda on the walls, and it's interesting, this kind of, especially given our politics today, this kind of, what's the word? There's, obviously, patriotism. What does that entail? The prioritizing our own, buy local, which is kind of it's something I try to do as often as possible, buying local. But
that's an environmental concern,
Yeah.
not necessarily. Well, I shouldn't. I have no idea why you do it. Maybe you just.
Well, it is, but there's also this. I'm blanking on the term I'm thinking of, but that keeping the money in your own community.
There's a economic nationalism.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
I mean, I really do like the way that this, morphs between worlds. It looks really interesting.
It's much more fluid at high resolutions. Each of these spaces kind of breathe and pulse slightly.
Oh yeah.
And you find yourself just kind of staring, like watching. It's like, am I seeing that or not?
So you said this game takes about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's more games now that have a sort of, they feel at liberty to only take a few hours.
Yeah.
I would say only take what they need to take, but there's still that tension where people are assume that they're getting value for their money by hoping that a game that they spent X amount of money at has X amount of time that you play it.
Yeah.
Did you feel... what did you buy this on a Steam sale? Did you get it in a bundle or something?
I don't remember. I mean, just knowing my buying habits, it was probably on some kind of sale.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I don't feel. I mean, if I'm getting my money's worth, it's not even really a question. I mean, it's because this is. I think this is one of the few games that actually feels like a narrative or a work of fiction in the form of a game. And just like I don't look at a book to see how much it cost
based on the number of pages that are
yeah.
in.
This one I don't mind. I mean, it doesn't. It's not like a AAA title,
right?
That where in 12 hours you're done and you've spent maybe $50-$60 on it. That
right.
I think I would get a little irate at, but that's why a lot of people don't do that anymore anyway.
Right. Yeah, but the AAA titles, sometimes what happens is they end up getting very bloated too. Yeah. And if you can tell your story in a fairly short period of time, you should be able to just tell it. I mean, this very much seems like a short story.
Yep.
How did I miss that one?
Do you suffer from existential instability, Elvin?
Yes.
I may call you Elvin, may I not? After all, we're like close friends now. You used to have no future, but here you are with a person.
Yeah,
However,
it is games like these that make me
attempting to peel back the layers of reality.
That have prompted me to study them, to study games in general, because the developers do have the liberty to create these short works. Although I'm sure it took years to develop this game.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that's where you see the the real. Let's say, I don't want to say innovation, because there's definitely innovations, technically speaking, in AAA games, and there's innovations. I don't want to discount innovations in narrative in AAA games either. But that's where you see people really trying out different things.
Analyzing the ultrasonic recordings from the North Berkeley sector. He's such hard work and he's tireless. Fine example for all of us.
I have to say, I'm a little bummed that I'm not going to be able to play through this game, and it's kind of janky, because now I'm interested. Although I think it's probably...
Political number is A82P67Z814. I work for Tesla Co. Order and vigilance are the...
I think it's tough to tell, like, thinking back, how long did it take me, because I spent a lot of time just pausing and standing and stationary looking for spots.
Right. Well, and this is the type of game that you soak in too.
Yeah. And like I mentioned early on, aesthetically, it's not stunning or breathtaking, but it's very, very tightly composed. Like it's at first, I think, going back to the question you asked about time and money. At first, when I realized you have such a small area that you can run around in, it was a little disappointing, especially after playing a lot of more open world games, and that being kind of a trend.
Right.
And I mean,
but at the same time, this is pretty. It's not a huge area, but there's a lot going on in it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shortage of scenery. Well, even this game, if anything, suffers, or the player suffers from impatience. After a while, you just kind of want to get on to the next level and see what the scenery is.
Well, yeah, and even there, I was just like, "Shut up, dude! I want to find that buzzing TV set."
And in the next level, sound is really important in this game too. And I don't know enough about sound engineering, and haven't thought about it enough to really make any sensible statement on it. But in the next chapter, you hear the televisions, but you can't get to them right away. So that buzzing becomes this, and the static. I haven't noticed it yet, but it becomes part of your interface. And
what a shock! But no smoke without fire, as they say.
And I try not to say too much about the last chapter, but the it's worth keeping in mind the theta and the delta, and those being waves, those factor into it later on.
So I'll give you a word of advice. Collaborate. Anyhow, they're going to eliminate your figure, that's for sure. So don't let whatever happens cause any problems for us. I mean, you. It's going to be war, We have to keep a low profile if we don't want any trouble. Maybe you could even write a book about the trial. Who knows? I can already see the title. The Republic Before Love. The memoirs of dear patriot writer Elvin Green.
So, I'm thinking, let's say, so these are all the books that you wrote, or actually, they're all the same, aren't they? So, let's say this is the, this is the fantasy world, and the other one is the real world.
You're going out of your mind.
Your wife that scorned you in the last world is being put on trial here. That seems very appropriate for...
Don't pull any shit. Anything with the prosecutor general.
As she factors in, she becomes a more prominent figure in the next chapter, where the next one, or the final, whatever the one on Mars is, where she's actually reachable.
Okay.
At least
What's wrong?
you're pursuing her.
Okay.
Anyway.
Alright, we are just about at 12 o'clock, or at 1 o'clock.
Don't pull any shit. Anything.
And I've got one more to do.
I think it's that road, one of the swiveling chairs. Or maybe that's another chapter, sorry. Just keep my mouth shut.
Oh, I don't have any clue. Oh. Where's that light coming? I keep staring at this demented idiot.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of puzzlers, and I don't like point and clicks. And this one, although those types of elements were frustrating at times, it didn't distract from
What's wrong?
the story for me. I enjoyed it.
So I think next week, Crystal Lee's going to be back, and we are going to play Magica, I believe. And I have filled our DH calendar with games up until May of 2018. So hopefully we'll actually make a readable calendar so people can maybe put it up on the coffee shop so people can start paying attention. Yeah, I wish I could stay and actually finish this game because now I'm invested, but unfortunately I can't. Maybe available on the Steam sale. I'm sure it is. If it's still going on, I don't know if it stopped.
Is it the 8th or the 5th?
It was the 5th, but I don't know if it stops in the middle of the day or if it stops tomorrow.
Pacific time or...
Yeah. Alright, well, thanks for joining us, the one person who did, but this has been Californium, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.